White-knuckling the steering wheel of truth down the pirate vox waves of rebellion, we are 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Blowing apart third shift and setting you free, live from Mama Bexy's Flackenjack.
Flackenjack. I'll tell you what, Gobbo, the Under Hive is damn near peaceful again, without all these damn cult running amok and all their ruckus. Damn shame we can't get nice weather to boot, because that would be just, the cherry on top. But a little chem rain never hurt anybody.
At least we're not outside, inside, or inside, outside, or however you would call that. We're inside in a hive, so we're inside, outside, inside.
So if you're on the porch in a hive, does that mean you're outside of your inside?
Yes.
Which is inside of something else is outside's inside?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. You're outside, inside.
Which is then outside because that thing is the outside of its own.
No, that's the inside. We're inside, outside. Not
Yeah.
outside,
And then the
inside.
next layer is another inside of an outside.
No, it's inside, outside. It's fine.
Really not good at math. I'm horrible at math.
Wow.
Yeah, last thing you want is to be last thing you want is to be double outside. That's bad.
That's
Yeah,
not where we want to be. So Hive rumors say that an Inquisitor has been spotted in the Habstacks near the core districts of the Underhive in the last week, poking around at the mess left by the Glass Eaters and those Dagon cultists.
Who knows, Gobbo? With all the rumors surrounding the disappearance of Elisa Daventhrone from the Spires, maybe it's all just a conspiracy to make us look bad.
Well, dressed so bad I make it look smoking good. I am your plasma-brained host, Goblin King, joined by the ever-present and accomplished jester of Death Race Alley himself, Marky.
Hola.
Putting boots on the ground just as fast as he puts them over his shoulders is our lover, who is just as much a fighter beast.
I am the life taker and the love maker.
Probably the only man in the Underhive to have won Best Dressed at Bexy's when only wearing a tuxedo t-shirt and chaps. We've got Kev.
Kev. Just Kev.
Hey, I have a tuxedo t-shirt and chaps. Legit. I actually own those.
Wait, have you worn them together?
I should. I fucking should. I have an orange tuxedo shirt and chaps.
There you go. Kev play is cosplay Kev.
It's cosplay Kev. Jesus Christ. Kev play. That sounds awful.
Well, guys, welcome to Lorus Obscurus, our monthly coverage of spooky, unexplained, and downright weird things that haunt our modern world. While we approach these topics with an eye toward open skepticism, we've had just as much weird and downright strange experiences ourselves that make us all kind of question what is going on. With this segment, we dive deep into the gothic, supernatural, and frightening topics in order to explore how folklore and myth become intertwined with society. Building an understanding of these stories we tell each other and peeling back the why helps to establish foundations in creative writing and world building. In essence, we're using all of these real-world oddities to kind of put those slices of life that make stories feel more real into everything. In this episode, we are diving into the missing 411, looking at a few cases as well as the theories behind what might be causing these weird disappearances in our national parks. We'll then look at how we might use these to build a mythology of disappearances into the background lore of the Innsmouth Hive itself, in our own homebrew backwater, the Carcosan sector of the Warhammer 40k universe. However, gents, before we dive in, does anybody have a spooky dooky experience that involves something along the lines of these outdoor experiences?
I mean,
Like Bigfoot?
not exactly this, but I do have a spooky dookie that I've been sitting on.
Oh, that's true.
Since-
Yes.
Yes, I have been
You gonna bring it
butthole
up?
clenched holding this spooky dookie in since my
Been
honeymoon.
a little constipated, Kev?
All right, let's
Yeah,
hear it, man.
Been holding this in. So, we were on a tour of course, we went in a bunch of castles. That's fair, expected.
Where
none of
spooky
the
stuff
castles-
happens.
Yeah, none of the castles specifically threw off any spooky dookies. However, we did end up in this really, really, really old church.
Ooh, okay.
And
okay.
it was a very small church, and it was reconstructed from a village that it was in originally, and it was brought over to this museum where they had a bunch of buildings put together, and it was about the Irish and their emigration from there to America during the potato famine, and how they were treated terribly and everything. And so they had a bunch of buildings from there, like the towns that the Irish people had originally lived in, and you could walk through them and stuff. And at one point, we ended up in this church building entirely by ourselves. There was a bunch of people there, too, that day. And it was just somehow we ended up as the only two people, Summer and I, ended up in this church by ourselves. And as we're kind of like wandering around, checking out kind of the back rooms of this little tiny church, one of the doors that we had just walked through just slammed shut out of nowhere.
Oh, dude, that's creepy.
Dude, out of complete nowhere. No wind.
Satan?
No wind. No noise. No like, sudden gust or anything like that. Just all of a sudden the door's just like, doosh. We're just like, time to go.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Message received and understood. We will leave your church.
Nah,
and
Kevin,
so we did.
You should have just been like,
Come on! I'm over here! Kill me!
Kevin just straight up shits in the middle of like a pew.
Nah. But it was just like, it was so weird because it was so quiet, and then the door slammed. And it was so weird because there were so many people there that day, too. It was like, how did all of a sudden we end up by ourselves in a building? And there's that, like, it just came out of nowhere. It was so, like, out of the ordinary. It just made all the hair on the back of our necks stand up, and it was just all kinds of, it threw all the vibes off.
Damn, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is so
And, like,
crazy.
I haven't had, and it was, like, the middle of the day. Like, that's something you'd expect to, like, make you feel weird at night, Because, like, a door slamming in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, what the hell was that? But, like, in the middle of the day, you don't expect weird stuff to happen.
yeah, the squirrel's just like watching you guys, and
I think I
Right.
made him shit himself.
all right, I'm done. I had my fun.
I was like, I'm gonna have another hour of this, ladies and gentlemen.
What is that? Is that the Missouri Triangle?
That's a Michigan triangle, actually.
Whatever.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Well, I don't necessarily have a short enough experience that surrounds the missing 411 to talk about. However, I did reach out to a couple of my search and rescue friends who work in various places, including California and the Appalachians, to kind of get an idea of what was going on with some of this stuff. And I'll bring up a little bit more of it later, but needless to say, even those who don't think there's anything necessarily spooky or paranormal around this shit have some incredibly creepy fucking stories surrounding search and rescue operations. Even if it's just finding the person who's missing and there was no spooky shit involved, they're just really hair-raising tales. And I definitely have to say, I'd like to give it out to anybody who does search and rescue. A lot of these guys are volunteers. A lot of these guys, it's like being, the way that it kind of sounds, it's a lot like being the Army National Guard. You work a couple weeks, so you train a couple weekends a month. And then when something goes down, they call you up and you just go out and you hunt the woods or hunt these trails for people who have gone missing. And, a lot of times they're not expecting to find somebody alive, especially in certain parts of the United States where the weather can turn on a dime and it can either be really, really dry or really, really cold, really, really fast. So a lot of props to you guys. Thank you very much for what you do. I know that you're out there hoping to rescue every single person you can. And I know that sometimes those of us who go on hikes are fucking idiots. So, thanks for coming and saving our bacon.
Pretty much.
So what is the missing 411? At its core, the missing 411 is the project of one man, David Pallades. I'm calling him Pallades. David has spent the last 10 or more years looking into the mysterious disappearances that have occurred in or around the national parks of the United States. To date, David has written 10 books on the subject of the missing 411, along with producing 2 documentaries on the matter. Both documentaries are streaming currently, and both are pretty good. However, I would highly recommend that you watch at least The Missing 411, The Hunted, if you're interested. It's on Hulu right now. And not only does it cover several disappearances, including one that we'll cover of Aaron Hedges, but it has an absolutely haunting recording made by a group of hunters of some very, very odd sounding animals. We're going to take a quick listen and then talk about it. So give me 1 second here.
Which
Go
I
ahead.
have also brought up before
Oh, yeah.
in past episodes, referencing like Bigfoot and stuff like that. This is actually the recording from that.
Later in 71 guys, and he's here by the stove here then. And as soon as it starts getting dark, we go in. Sometimes you might hear a grunt or a sound or something like that, and that's when we want to get inside the shelter. You still don't know what you're dealing with.
So this is Ron Moorhead. He owns the space that these guys go out and like hunt and camp in.
And that's we put between these trees, and strap it inside a cable, and they would start making their sounds. And that was in 71. We first started hearing them, and we started recording them.
That was my dog.
There's two of them across the creek at the big rocks.
So as you guys kind of heard at the beginning, there's a bunch of whooping and there's a bunch of like traditional Bigfoot noises is kind of what I would call them. And then the hunters, you'll hear in that clip, you'll hear the animal in the distance make a noise and then the hunter mimics it. You get that kind of far away version of the sound, and then you get a much closer kind of human sounding or human bassy echoey version.
Okay, that's what that was.
Right. And then towards the end, right after he says there's two of them right there across the creek, you hear what sounds like a woman scream. And then a bunch of what kind of sounds like, what the fuck was that? That isn't human voices. That's whatever they're recording, vocalizing back and forth to one another. They sent this vocal clip, they sent this recording to a couple of audio forensics guys because they were like, what the fuck are we dealing with? Are we dealing with feral people? Are we dealing with other campers fucking with us? Are we dealing with, elk noises or some other animal that just kind of makes deeper bassy noises? And the guys, the forensic audio guys that like pulled this apart and came back said these are definitely human or subhuman vocalizations, but they come from a creature that by the sound and by the estimate of distance has to be taller than a human. Now, this comes up in The Missing 411, The Hunted, the show. The clip's really good. It's pretty long. It's a little segment. They interview the guys that are out there. They show a couple of different clips and they actually show some video. I definitely highly recommend watching it. They don't ever come out and say, we think this is Sasquatch. They just present it as something fucking weird that happened several times at their camping spot.
Yeah, basically. And that's the one in one of the Bigfoot episodes that we talked about where I was saying that they go up to and used to hunt, and then they started seeing all sorts of weird stuff and hearing these voices.
Yeah, and now they go out there once a year to kind of meet up and camp, but apparently they don't hunt anymore. I definitely, it's super cool. I was super excited that I stumbled across it after Tom had mentioned it. So
I just have to say that listening to that recording, though, it made the hair stand up on the back of my
Dude,
neck.
it's real weird. Like
it gives off a vibe.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Can you imagine being inside of like your hut? Like, because that's what they did. They made like a shack out there. You imagine sitting inside your shack and hearing that. outside.
Yeah. It's like a bunch of trees that are really like Tom's on the money. It's a bunch of trees that are close to each other, and they put logs in between the spaces, and then they would go in there at night. That's where they would sleep to like, stay away from bears and shit. It's literally, it's a fucking, yeah, it's not,
shack.
it's not a house. It's not a base at all.
Yeah, it just looks like a bunch of true logs that they like stood up on end. But I mean, you imagine, and then like the communication those things have between themselves. You know, it straight up sounds like another language. Like, and
at first you're like, oh, wild animal. But the longer it played, like, I guess my subconscious was able to like connect that, like, that's a back and forth.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, as my brain like heard more of it, it became more creepy.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for her name right now and I can't find it, but there's a gal on Instagram who posted up a story recently about feral people. There's some of this stuff is going around on TikTok and all of that. I cannot remember her name for the life of me, but she.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
She had gone. She had gone out camping with her family, and she had come back and she had made this post on Instagram, and she said, "Hey y'all, I'm pretty sure that I had heard some feral people while we were out on this camping trip." And she recounts this story, and you can tell it's an Instagram reel, and I'm sure it's on TikTok as well. And I want to say her name's like Ashley or something along those lines, like at Ashley or at Caitlin or something. And I wish I had written this down because I heard her talk on a segment when I was doing all this research, and like hearing her talk made the hair on my head, like all the hair on my body stand up because I could tell all the hair on her body was standing up while she was tailing. So
you can feel it.
They're out there at a lodge, right? And they've got their kids and everything. And it's like a cabin, it's not like camping in the buff. It's literally like they went out and rented a cabin. It's glamping, which I love. Like, it's totally awesome. You're still out in the middle of fucking nowhere. But they brought the kids in because they started hearing screaming from down the hill. And they just assumed at first that it was coming from a different camp. And the way that she relays it is it's this woman going like, "Oh, you fucking bitch, I'm going to fucking kill you." And then it's a bunch of kids screaming in response. And then another kid screaming. And then it's a guy going, "Oh, she's got a weapon. She's holding it. I'm going to die. Help, help, help." And it's all this shit. And she's just like, there was something about all of it that made us go, do not go outside. Do not offer help. And then there was some additional information that had come out afterward that feral people had been spotted in the area. And we'll talk about feral people later in the episode, but the idea is that there are just fucking people who have been abandoned or have chose to abandon themselves in the wilderness and do not follow any societal rules anymore and may not even know societal rules. There was a really famous case of a feral girl that was rescued in a national park that they made a movie about it too. Although the movie is a lot more tame. I think the movie's called Nell. The movie's way tamer than the actual like event, but they brought this girl back and they tried to like socialize her again. And it didn't really take. I mean, it eventually took after several years. When she was in her 20s, she kind of calmed the fuck down. But like this 8-year-old girl would fucking flat out bite people and try to rip chunks out of people's body. Like, just no concept of human civilization anymore. So there's that. We'll get into it a little bit later. So to get back to David, David graduated from the University of San Francisco in 1977 before beginning a 20-year career in law enforcement. He's served on the San Jose Police Department SWAT team, as well as working in the Street Crimes Unit and serving other various detective roles during his career. He currently works as a private investigator, with most of his time currently going specifically to the topic of the missing 411. So, for a dose of skepticism here, David has also published 2 books on Bigfoot and founded the research group North American Bigfoot Research. He still serves as their director. There's been a bunch of controversy surrounding them since 2013, when they released a scientific paper that reported to have 111 samples of Bigfoot DNA that had all been analyzed, and they had basically released like a Scientific American paper. They sent it to a scientific journal and everything. However, the validity of the science is in big question. and the paper is of incredibly poor written quality. There's also a lot of the things that it cites that are just a really bad string of mishandled and misdocumented evidence. Chain of custody being interrupted, things being missed, the labels being changed, everything that basically tells anybody in crime scene investigation or in DNA analysis that this is no longer good. Also, leading geneticists have commented that many of the findings as worded make almost no sense, and a lot of them come across as either unfinished or just completely contradictory. So just a dose of skepticism.
Bigfoot is like a part of the whole missing 411.
He's one of the potentials.
Oh.
But the important part of Bigfoot's connection to this is this dude, David Paulides, is very well known because of his involvement in the Bigfoot world and then because of his involvement with the missing 411.
Okay.
So to get into where the bridge might be, it was while investigating other occurrences in national parks, possibly connected to Bigfoot sightings, although I couldn't find any evidence that that was it, that David was approached by a pair of off-duty park rangers. According to David, knowing of his background, the rangers confided in him that there is a startling number of unsolved disappearances and cold cases that exist within the National Park Service. Utilizing the Freedom of Information Act, David requested a list of these disappearances from both the Department of the Interior and the National Park Service. However, he was denied, originally on the grounds that one didn't exist. And this isn't quite true. What they said was, why do you want it? And then when he said why they wanted it, they went, oh, one doesn't exist. So obviously, if they say, why do you want it? They might have one, right? It's important to mention here that denying a Freedom of Information Act request is pretty much illegal, at least if you're the right person and you've gone about requesting it in the right ways. However, there are a lot of loopholes, and most of them are super fucking sketchy. Further pursuing the issue seemed to reveal that a list does exist, or that the means to collate one does exist at least. But oddly enough, his appeal was also rejected, this time due to him not having his work published and available in enough libraries across the United States. This is one of those loopholes that can be used to deny an unpublished author from having a request for freedom of information accepted. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, however, because nothing in the precedent for this loophole states that there's a minimum number of libraries or even a limited number of minimum number, of publications that have to exist. You can publish one book, sell 10 copies, and you shouldn't be subject to this loophole anymore. But it's the one they used. He had a couple more appeals to use, however, and on the next appeal, he was told that no list existed as the Department of the Interior is not collecting any data of this type to date.
Which is not true.
Right. However, disappearances and crimes in national parks, disappearances and crimes in national parks are the responsibility of the Independent Park Service Department. This is weird, and like Tom just said, not true, because the Park Service is a federal organization, a lot like the FBI, and most park rangers are considered federal officers and can actually be called in to operate as federal officers in several cases. However, it's also not surprising, as a lot of true crime history is filled, especially recent true crime history, and I mean the 90s and the early hundreds, by the way, or aughts, by the way. It's full of police departments and state investigation units not communicating with each other, if not competing and being outright hostile to one another when trying to get a job done. That joke in the Matrix, don't give me that juris mice diction crap, that holds up today. That's still a problem. So his last appeal also came with the caveat that building David a list had manpower and financial costs associated with it. So they're admitting it can be done. When David offered to cover the costs himself, he was told that it would be in the neighborhood of $1.5 million. Essentially, this is another roadblock that they tossed up. They got to this number by estimating that it would take $65 an hour to collate this list. So $65 an hour divided by 1.5 million. How many cases are we talking about? That could be a fuck ton of cases. Now we're going to shed the skepticism light on the other side. The side that something is going on. It sounds like the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior is either working to hide information, they're extremely negligent in tracking their own information, or they have a lot of ongoing investigations that they're unwilling to publicly share. David has had better luck tracking down and building a list out of himself. He's going to individual publicly listed disappearances and cold cases at each individual park, making the requests and getting the information. And a lot of the times, this information isn't really hard to find. A lot of this stuff, just to be clear to you guys, if you want to go look right now, you can go look at the active missing cases in Yellowstone. You can go look at the active missing cases in Zion. This is public information because the Park Service is looking for these people currently. Since the beginning of his research in the late 2000s, the first missing 411 book for you guys was released in 2012 to kind of establish a timeline. David has identified over 2,000 cases of unexplained disappearances that involve that cat.
Sorry.
It was perfect timing.
I know, right?
So he's found over 2,000 cases between the 1930s and present day. To be clear here, more people have disappeared. David's research aims to filter out the disappearances that have other extremely plausible causes, such as obvious animal attacks, serial killers operating in the area, kidnappings and abductions happening in the area often, death by suicide being known to happen in the national park, accidental deaths and accidents, acts of nature such as weather, and other people who just walk into the woods because they don't want to be found. If he can find any trace that it hits one of those 8 different markers, he doesn't count it as a missing 411 case. He also filters out a lot of the solved cases where the investigation later revealed how or why somebody disappeared. So in some cases, he'll put something in the missing 411, and then they'll either find the person or they'll find out a very plausible reason. Like, Samson goes missing and everybody looks for him. There's this big fucking investigation and they never find him. And then like 3 years later, the police identify the fact that $400,000 was dropped into his account 3 days after he gave a black duffel bag to a person in the middle of Central Park. And then it's kind of like, okay, something happened and there's a track, and he'll pull
There's
that
a red
case.
flag rather than just a big question mark.
Exactly. Again, to jump back to the skeptical side, against the phenomenon, 2,000 people since 1930s seems like an extremely low number. That's only 22 people a year. For comparison purposes, only about 12 deaths a year can be linked to mountain lions in the U.S., both on and off national parks. 11 people a year die from bear attacks in the U.S., and 11 people die worldwide from shark attacks. Then, in the last 100 years, only 22 people have died from wolf attacks in North America. So this isn't just the U.S., this is the entirety of North America. And 4 of those deaths were actually because of rabies. They weren't because the wolf killed the person. They were because the wolf was rabid. It's important to remember, though, that this is the research effort of a single person, and he's collating all of this data by going to individual parks and requesting the information piecemeal. So 2,000 discovered in the last 12 years may just be the tip of a much bigger iceberg. So while the National Park Service doesn't collect this data nationally, we do have some figures to look at that have been collated. The National Park Service Search and Rescue reported 4,830 search and rescue incidents launched in the top 15 most visited parks between 2018 and 2020. The National Park Service encompasses 432 national parks, although this does include parks in Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, America Samoa, and Guam. The NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, estimated around 664,776 people go missing in the United States each year under all circumstances. So this isn't just on national parks. This is every person who goes missing. This is an average number that's been collected from data available between 2007 and 2020. Around 80% of these are missing minors, and 75% are missing adults who are found within the first 72 hours. That leads to that whole first 48 concept. You've got a lot better chance of finding somebody in the first 2 to 3 days than any other time.
I mean, that's a combination of standard survival statistics as well as evidence generation, right?
Right.
Because after a certain amount of time, like people will stop remembering when they last saw them, things like that.
When you first said that, I totally thought you meant like miners as in like mining. I was like, man, I didn't know we had that many miners out there.
So on average, 4,400 unidentified bodies are found yearly, which is fucking crazy. This is 4,400 people in the United States, dead bodies that are fucking found, and they're like, we don't know who this is.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
We have no fucking clue. An average of 13,885 unidentified persons remain as open cold cases, and that kind of travels between year to year. Now, here's another super scary statistic. As of January 2nd of 2022, the U.S. Department of Justice had listed 21,258 missing persons cases, suggesting that around 10,000 people go missing every day.
Wait, what?
Yeah. By the 2nd of January, 21,258 people had gone missing.
Alien.
I did not find a more recent number than that. And I was like, holy shit, that number floored me. Now, as a quick aside, if you guys are super interested into missing people and what's happening around missing people, it's a lot deeper than the missing 411. We're looking at this national park thing and how it kind of...
Yeah, specifically located towards like parks and things like that.
Right.
As
But
in like wildlife reserves, not like your park in your
not the park down the street. But the U.S. Pipeline 23 in Ohio, the Appalachian missing women, the Trail of Tears, or not the Trail of Tears, the Highway of Tears up in Canada. There are a lot of places where people go missing all the time. And a lot of times it's women and kids. And if you're interested in knowing more about that, there's a great podcast called Someplace Underneath that's done by the Last Podcast Network. I believe the hosts are Natalie and Amber. And they're pretty good. They specifically go into cases of missing women, and they talk about like how to shed light on helping find people, which I think is really healthy. I'd go look into it if you're interested in this. However, as I said, we're getting right back in to the missing 411. We want to know about the national parks. We just wanted to toss out statistics to give you guys an idea of the fact that, he's only got 2,000 in his pile, but that could literally be the top of a giant fucking iceberg of people who have gone missing in these national parks.
And 100% like is that tip of the iceberg. I mean, just in like firsthand accounts, what you hear, right, from like people who are like, and I mean, and who knows if it's really real or not, but
right,
with people talking, giving firsthand accounts from like rescue people or smoke jumpers, stuff like that, it's either everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid, like everybody's like, oh man, I'm gonna make up stories about that too, or everyone has very similar stories. I mean, just the stories from people in that documentary, like this is a person's life that is no longer there. Like they are legally declared dead, and it's their family talking. And it's like it's not like one thing. It's like there are lots of people that talk about this stuff. And it's like yeah, well, but I mean, like in more so, like there's one special, I don't know if you're going to go into it, Ryan, but the evidence dictates on items that were found that like this person who went missing was there the whole time. Like in the various times where they found things, he'd been sitting on a rock looking down into a town. Yeah. Like, and he could have gotten there. Like he could have found it.
I'm totally going to talk about that guy first.
Okay, actually. Cool. All right, perfect. Tie into that. There you go. Take it away. It's awesome. That one boggles my fucking mind, dude. Because you look at it and you're like, well, what was he doing? Like
me and my going to be wife soon watched both of these documentaries this last week. We got really into this stuff. She puts up with all of my like weird, like fucking true crime shit every once in a while, which is awesome. Not that she ever listens, but love you, babe. And we watched the missing 411, the hunted, and like every single fucking case, like the first case, I was like, oh dude, it's an old guy, it's an old guy. He fell down somewhere. And the second person, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally understand what happened to this guy. And then I got to Aaron Hedges, who's the first person we're going to talk about. And like, they started getting into it. And I was like, what the fuck happened to this guy?
Well, even the old guy, even the old one-eyed guy, like it's
the
still
old
like
one-eyed guy,
where he
yeah.
went missing wasn't that far. Like, and yeah, I know it's easy to get turned around, but it's not like this dude. This dude was like a combat vet, dude. Like, he knows his way around the woods. Like,
so the picture that I've got up right now. So if you guys are interested in supporting us on Patreon, we've got a really cool benefit for you, and that's video podcasts. If you're watching the video podcast right now, the picture I just pulled up is of a little girl pointing to the crazies in Montana. And the crazies in Montana.
The crazies, that's it.
Is the first little area we'll talk about. So famous cases. There are several extremely interesting cases in the missing 411. If this subject intrigues you guys, one, let us know and we'll do a follow-up episode. We'll dig into a lot more cases and we'll kind of really pull it apart. And two, I really encourage you to look up both of David's documentaries. I probably am going to end up reading one or two of his books just because I kind of get into this stuff. This is like my research bug has been itched a little bit. But in his investigations and reporting, to be clear, David goes to lengths to just report the facts that he's uncovered. He does a really good job of avoiding editorializing or even outright suggesting what he thinks might be happening in each individual report. He does, however, suggest when you talk to him that all of the cases he's investigated do fall under the definition of paranormal, and that is denoting events or phenomenon such as telekinesis or clairvoyance that are beyond the scope of normal scientific understanding. He removes the telekinesis or clairvoyance in his definition, but that's the full. I'm giving you guys the Webster's definition. So David has also done a lot of work to generate a list of common factors or things that he calls profile points that connect all of these cases. And we're going to go over those right now. The first one is point of separation. The moment a victim becomes separated from a group, no matter how short that time is, they disappear. And sometimes it's literally fucking seconds. It is literally seconds. And then that person is just fucking gone. The time of disappearance. A lot of these people go missing in the mid to late afternoon hours. Boulder fields. Victims are often found to disappear near or in rock or boulder fields, specifically granite. Near water. Victims also vanish near bodies of water. Weather event. Weather incidences often occur either around the time of the disappearance or just as the search and rescue operations start. Yeah, it's
storms,
so fucking weird, right?
Blizzards, things like that, yeah.
And it can be
not little weather occurrences either. Like it can be little ones, but majority of them are big ones.
They're pretty big. Yeah, exactly. Disabilities and illnesses. Often the victims have obvious disabilities or illnesses. This can be as simple as hearing loss. You're using a hearing aid, or be as complex as being somewhere on the autism spectrum. Canines can't track. Canines can't find a scent. They lose the scent in places they shouldn't. They become disoriented while tracking the scent, or even become extremely fearful while tracking a scent, refusing to go forward because they're afraid. However, this one is true in almost 95% of the cases he's documented. This one profile point happens 95% of the time, which is insane. The other thing that's interesting, another one is when they do find something, it's in an area that's been previously searched. Victims are found in areas that have been searched dozens of times by the best search and rescue teams that have existed. In some cases, the fucking green goddamn berets searched an area, and then they found the body there later.
Well, and I looked into, because it's like I've been into this stuff forever. I looked into this on how they search, because I was like, yeah, I mean, you know, I've walked along a road and not seen something.
Exactly.
But they literally they do it in grids, and they do shoulder to shoulder walking. Like,
and they stretch strings out behind them.
Yep.
So if something hits the string behind them, they can feel it while they're walking. It's insane.
Yeah. It's literally grids, and they literally walk like side by side. So, you know, it's not like you can miss a body when you walk, like you'd step on it. That's how close they're walking together.
Yeah. The other thing is, the thing that they've pointed to, or the thing that I'm going to point to, is it's kind of like the victims are being placed back in these spots after the searches have happened. Missing clothing it's almost as if the victims are being placed there after the spot's been searched.
Yeah.
So missing
Predator.
clothing. Yeah, exactly. Clothes and shoes have been removed by the time that they are found. So they'll find the body and then they'll find the shoes and the clothes like neatly folded somewhere nearby.
Or they won't find the body, but they'll find clothes.
But they'll find
folded
just clothes.
Yeah. I mean, there was that case of the little boy who went missing, and they found
that one's creepy too. We talk
they
about
found
him today.
his pants, his shirt folded on a log. Yeah, an animal had gotten into it like a fucking muskrat, but there was no blood. And they found the top of his skull.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I remember somebody talking about the fact that his clothes were like set aside.
Yeah, they weren't.
We'll
they
cover
were
him
because.
in detail.
Oh, you were going to? Okay.
Oh yeah, he's one of our other ones.
I'm already way.
No, it's cool, man. It's awesome because like it's the reason we do this segment. It shows the mythology. It shows the urban legend. It shows the fact that we all kind of know that this shit's happening, and it builds a folklore. And that's not to say that it's not true because this shit's actually happening, but it still builds a folklore.
Dude, listen to that kid's dad. It happened.
Oh, you know, dude, listen to all the people involved. It fucking happened. So unknown causes of death. Medical examination can't determine a cause of death. That's an interesting one because usually, even in badly decomposed cases, they can usually figure out what happened to you. And the last one is geographical clustering. Missing cases happen in clusters of 3 to 70 all across the United States.
I remember him talking about that. That's how he was mapping them.
Well, and if you overlay his cluster map with a map of the cave systems that we don't know a lot about in the United States, Mullins brought this up. Mullins from our community brought this up.
Yeah.
There's weird correlations. And that's another thing. If you guys want to join us on Patreon, we talk to our patrons a lot about the episodes that we're doing and we get their feedback. So we're going to look at a few cases, starting with one that I find the most interesting, and that's the disappearance of Aaron Hedges. Aaron Hedges was a 38-year-old hunter from Bozeman, Montana, who went elk hunting in the crazy mountains of Montana early in September of 2014 with his buddies Greg Letnier and Joe Depew. Their planned route would take them from the Cottonwood Lake to Campfire Lake, and they had planned to spend about a week on this trip. While the group had 2 horses and a mule, Aaron had planned to be the one out of the group to walk in. He was leading the mule. He had on him just a pack of basic supplies, his bow, arrows, and a 44 Ruger Super Hawk pistol. The rest of his gear was on the mule. The mule spooked, spilling the luggage, including some of Aaron's other supplies. In need of replacement supplies, such as things like a bedroll and sleeping bag, Aaron decided to go back to a cache the group had set up and maintained yearly, just in case they had such an emergency.
And a cache is usually like a lockbox or something that's out in the woods that you keep emergency supplies in.
Yeah. He headed off alone, planning to return just before nightfall. His route would take him up to Sunlight Lake, which was above. It's where the cache had been placed. This wasn't a long distance or difficult hike for an experienced hunter and outdoorsman like Aaron, and he took along his pistol, his bow, his arrows, his cell phone, a GPS unit, and a walkie-talkie. To be clear, because a lot of places that you'll find this information kind of misreport what happened to shine light on his 2 friends being the killers, Aaron actually did check in at around noon and then later at 4:30 to update them on his progress. This area was also incredibly well known to all 3 of these guys. They knew this shit like the back of their hand. However, this was the last time anyone saw Aaron alive. When Aaron didn't arrive that night, it was only slightly worrying since he had checked in at 4:30 and his buddies decided to wait until the next morning, figuring he probably slept at the cache. When he hadn't arrived by then, they contacted him or attempted to contact him several times on the walkie-talkie and then decided to get out and check their GPS system. So they each had these little GPS, I think it's a Garmin GPS system that were networked together so they could see where his GPS system pinged last. The GPS pinged from further down the trail, past the fork Aaron would have needed to take to get to the cache. At this point, they assumed his GPS pinged from about a mile or 2 further than you should be. That makes sense. He's out of walkie range. He's probably just, he probably just got lost in the twilight.
Well, and it was snowing, I believe, at the time too.
Yeah, it had started to snow. It hadn't quite started blizzarding, but it had started to snow. They actually tracked him a little ways down the path that he would have taken trying to contact him on the walkie and just hadn't been able to raise him. At that point, they assumed that he had gotten lost or turned around in the storm, and they decided that they were going to wait for another day or so for him to get back on track and make it back to their camp. So this is the point where a lot of traditional reporting gets a bunch of these details wrong. Traditional reporting will tell you that Aaron's wife got scared because she hadn't heard from the guys and called the police. This isn't what happened. Greg and Joe decided after day 3 of Aaron being missing that something was very wrong and specifically hiked out of the canyon to make the phone call to the police. To be clear, this guy, an avid outdoorsman with enough supplies to survive for a week and theoretically access to a cache, which could help him extend that even further, had only been missing for 3 days. Being somebody who's hunted and being somebody who's gone on some of these long trips, that's really not a long time. It sounds like a long time, and it's really bad when you're missing for that much time. Don't get me wrong at all. But we've all gone on week-long camping trips. We've all come back.
I've done multiple day backpacking, like into the middle of nowhere with no cell phone reception. Like it's just like you literally disappear for a couple days.
Exactly.
You go off grid. Like it's normal. And like
I was gone for 8 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to do that once a year. I'm not sure how much my lovely soon-to-be wife liked it, but
think about boat people, like
exactly.
dudes who do overnight fishing and stuff like that. Like if a dude was often going out on 1 or 2 day trips, if he went out on a 1 day and decided and didn't come back the next day, you'd be like, he just decided to go on a 2 day. Cool.
Search and rescue efforts started immediately. They called in local resources, including several helicopters, and nothing was found until day 2, when a helicopter spotted something that looked like a campfire, radioed ground teams that went to it, and they found a campfire. This campfire had remains of a pack of cigarettes that matched Aaron's brand. And nearby the campfire, they found Aaron's boots carefully placed by a stand of trees. Also, the water bladder from Aaron's camel pack was found. In a really bizarre twist, however, this is the exact same area that had dozens of search and rescue personnel all over it the first day of the search, and they hadn't seen anything. Now, as we mentioned, this was blizzard conditions, so that could have caused it, but dogs also hadn't managed to pick up any scent in this area at all either. Day 2, everything changed. These were the only traces of Aaron found during the search. 9 months later, in June of 2015, a hiker who was staying with his family at the Rain Anchor Ranch came across some discarded outdoor gear. This included a pack, high visibility orange hunting vest, and a scattering of survival bars and snack wrappers. These items had been very definitely placed at the base of a tree, within sight of the Rain Anchor Ranch's property fence.
There's a water bottle there too, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was a water bottle that he had put down.
Yeah. That's even. In the pack was Aaron's cell phone, the walkie-talkie, his wallet, his hunting license, and the unfired 44 Ruger Superhawk. Even stranger, as Tom just mentioned, on a boulder nearby, which had a clear view of the Rain Anchor Ranch house, was found a thermos cup and an open energy drink. However, even though the search was again launched around this area and at this point extended to about a 5-mile radius, they turned up nothing. So this guy was within visual sight of somebody's house at some point, or at least that's what the signs point to.
Well, and he's also been walking around for months without shoes.
Right. Right. It wasn't until the next summer that the remains were found, roughly half a mile from where the pack had been discovered and 15 miles from where he had last been seen. This is also 6 miles away from the campfire where his boots had been found, suggesting that he would have had to have walked the backcountry without any trails for 6 miles over rough mountain terrain with no boots during a fucking blizzard. The remains were also well within sight of not only the ranch, but an incredibly well-used road. By the way, they allegedly never found any of the bones from his feet.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't make any sense.
It's so fucking weird. And when you see the goddamn map and they plot everything out, you're like, how the fuck? And then they interview the owner and his wife of the Rain Anchor Ranch, and like literally they point to where the shit was found from their porch, and you're like, oh yeah, I can totally see that tree. You can't see the rock from their porch, but if you were sitting on the rock, you totally could have fucking seen their house. They show a shot from the rock.
This dude literally he was going back and forth like this whole time.
Yeah. Or yeah. Who fucking knows?
I forget. I don't think they ever said how old, like what the time of death was.
No,
I don't know if they ever said that.
Yeah, I'd love to dig deeper into Aaron Hedges. I think they're still looking into a lot of it as part of it. So, but yeah, it's just crazy. So the next two cases were suggested by our community over on Discord. Special shout outs to Mullins for both of these. So the first one is the case of Jared Ottadero. Jared Ottadero was a 3-year-old boy who went missing on October 2nd, 1999. Jared's father, Alan Ottaretto, owned a mountain retreat in the Roosevelt National Forest in Colorado with his brother. The two had exchanged free board for helping get the lodge ready by shuttering it for the winter to a Christian single social group that Alan had recently become part of. Alan had gone through kind of a messy divorce. He had custody of both of his kids as a single father, and he was getting back into the dating scene. Jared and his 6-year-old sister, Jocelyn, had been excited about going on a short hike along Big South Trail to see a local fish hatchery. Having many close and trusted friends within the Christian singles group, Alan had no problem letting his kids accompany the main hike of about 11 adults. Like most kids, Jared and Jocelyn played during the hike, running out in front and falling behind several times, but always staying within eye and earshot. However, at one point, Jared ran ahead around a blind turn in the trail, and this is when he vanished. He was last seen by a pair of fishermen who talked to him at the edge of the trail in the river. Neither of the fishermen had seen an issue with the boy being alone, as he was still within very easy eyesight of part of the hiking group. The hiking group had kind of like spread over a little bit of a distance because people walk at different speeds, and there was no real like moment of urgency.
Oh yeah, that's totally normal. Like as long as you aren't, a quarter mile apart, that's reasonable,
So these fishermen reported that the last they saw of Jared, he was walking back towards the campsite. An extensive search and rescue operation was launched to find Jared. However, this was hampered by multiple difficulties. First off, the media sensation around Jared's disappearance was fueled by the ongoing and developing case of John Benet Ramsey. So another missing kid was like blood in the water of the Shark Tank of the national news media coverage. For those of you who don't remember the John Benet Ramsey case, it was fucking huge. It was massive. It was one of the two cases that launched the entire court TV phenomenon that I think we're still kind of in the middle of. At one point, the search and rescue area was surrounded by 17 news crews. This caused unforeseen infrastructural and logistical issues all over the place. A major event was the crash of the Huey UH-1N helicopter dispatched from Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming, to aid in the search and rescue efforts. Struggling with its new fuel load and the odd mountain conditions, the helicopter fell 100 feet, crashing into the forest and Big Bend Trail itself. On board at the time were 4 Air Force personnel and Mark Sheets, an experienced local search and rescue member. Sheets was the only crew member not in a seat. He was actually seated in the open doorway of the craft, so he could look out and try to get a better sight of the kid. As the helicopter crashed, he tried to shut the door to protect the crew as the shearing rotor parts and flying tree debris blanketed the entire side of the helicopter. However, he was unable to do it, and choked with wood, a giant tree branch struck the Air Force doctor on board, fracturing his eye socket. As the helicopter crashed on the trail, the Air Force personnel were able to get out of the burning wreck quickly. However, Sheets had been trapped inside. With the wreck threatening to explode, the search and rescue efforts were redirected into getting Sheets out of the wreck, which they did, although he suffered a severe concussion and was left with a 13-inch gash down to his femur bone and 3 broken vertebrae. It's fucking insane that a helicopter crashed during this. It is even more fucking insane that nobody goddamn died. And it is a bad
Right?
crash. Bad
That's not-
crash.
I mean, just falling 100 feet on its own, but then also like, oh, we're gonna also just turn a wood chipper. We're just gonna
Oh, yeah.
make it into a wood chipper, and shit's gonna light on fire. And oh, by the way, the door was open when this happened.
Yeah, it's just, it's insane. It's insane that this happened.
What a lovely whirly bird doodle of death.
Right? Auto rotation is a real thing, by the way. That's when a helicopter
Oh, god damn it. You're showing pictures of the kids' clothes. Fuck.
crashes without creation. Oh, yeah, of course.
There's
I
no
know, man.
blood on those
It's me.
clothes at all.
It's me.
No blood.
So not only that, but psychics came out to the site to give visions of the boy's location, which didn't help. A barefoot
Yeah.
man and his mule showed up at one point to help out, which obviously was a little strange. A Native American shaman came out to plead with the mountain to return the boy. All sorts of weird shit. They also had divers in and out of the river, and an Air Force plane was called in to replace the downed helicopter. However, after approximately 11 days of intense searching, it was called off as the trails had gone too cold to follow. This is another case where dogs just stopped with sense in the middle of trails and gave up.
Yeah,
Then-
and you'd think with what they were insinuating the death was that they would find that.
Exactly. Then in 2003, two businessmen, Rob Osborne and Gareth Watts, were on a hike in the Padre Canyon. Purdue?
I don't know. I'm just going by what I think you think it is.
Padre. So these guys were on a hike in the Padre Canyon near Big South Trail and came across human remains. They found Jared's clothes neatly laid out and one of his sneakers in pristine condition, without a trace of dirt or any scuff marks. They also found tucked into a rock nook the top of a skull, and a single molar. DNA testing has since matched this 100% to Jared. At the time, they could only match it about 85% because it was 2003. They retested it a couple of years ago, and they fucking know it's him. These remains were found much higher up the mountain, overlooking the Big South Trail itself. So this other part of the trail, it's in the same canyon, but it's much, much higher up on the side of the mountains. It was officially suggested that Jared was killed by a mountain lion, but while mountain lion tracks were found near Jared's tracks in the 1999 search, this doesn't explain several things about this case. First off, his clothes. A mountain lion would have eaten the stomach first, and Jared's fleece jacket wasn't damaged in a consistent manner. As Tom had mentioned earlier, there was damage, but they put it down to like voles and mice and muskrats.
Well, yeah, they'll make bedding out of material. But I mean, even if you look
Exactly.
at the photos of the jacket, it's fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's no
it's just
damage
a
to
little
the
old.
jacket.
Yeah, it's not like it's torn apart. Like the pants are, but again, it's not. There's
But
not
there
like
was also no blood.
Yeah, there's no blood whatsoever. You know.
And that's weird to get to the pants. His pants were also found inside out, as if they had been pulled off in a hurry. This is
That's it.
something that is inconsistent with a mountain lion attack. An animal doesn't fucking rip your pants off.
Yeah, that's right.
Then there
And
was
if an animal's got a hold of your pants and you're wearing them,
a fucking dragon everywhere.
and you're like shedding your pants because they've got their claws in them, their claws are probably also in your leg.
Exactly.
Like
there
there would
so
have been
much
blood
damage.
from-
Well,
happening.
I mean, especially when you look at the size of this poor kid. You know, like this
Right,
kid is
like-
not a large kid. I mean, he's like what, 6?
He was
Like
3.
he's the fucking A3. Like, oh, dude, he's tiny. He's gonna be tiny.
Them damn gene stealers.
Right?
All right, that's a callback.
Oh yeah, dude. He's
Yeah. This little
Tiny.
kid. Then there was Jared's single sneaker. If it had been dragged that far up the mountain and away from the trail that he'd been missing from, it would have shown much more damage and wear. Not to mention just dirt and dust. And when they found this sneaker, they could still see the sparkles on it. It was I believe it was a Tarzan sneaker from the Disney store.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it makes sense that a mountain lion, like, the reason why they were labeling it a mountain lion is because it was taken, the body was taken away. and that's what mountain lions will do. They'll take it away and stash it. But it doesn't. He'd have to drag this kid up this mountain, and that's the thing is none of the clothes even look like that. Like,
and they had stated too that like one of the reasons they may not have found him right off the bat, one of the reasons that they may not have found him immediately if it had been a mountain lion is mountain lions will hide their kill and then they'll eat it later, especially if there's a lot of like stuff going on. Yeah, and mountain lions, they'll drag a body somewhere else to do it. They'll drag their kill somewhere else to eat in peace, but there's no consistent damage to the clothing to suggest that happened at all. Any of that shit.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Like the fact that exactly they thought it was that because it was away from people up a mountain, which would make sense for a mountain lion to stash a body, but there's no evidence to support that other than the location.
Yeah. And like, why would the pants? I'm still hung up on like the pants being inside out and no blood. Mm-hmm. Like the only thing that would make me think of is like, oh, a kid got stuck in a thorn bush and took his pants off because he literally couldn't get out of the bushes.
Right.
But like,
or somebody snatched him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part. But
yeah, like they got ripped off and then they just got picked away by like rodents and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what they look like. They definitely look like they were ripped apart and torn in little pieces by like moths and rodents.
Yeah. The pant leg missing a little more. But the rest of it totally looks like
because it's not like a clean rip, or it's not like it doesn't look like tears. It looks like something was picking away at it.
Yeah, but it's not like large bite like a mountain lion took his leg off or something.
Well, and there's no blood. Like even if it had been a large bite, there's no blood.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was the thing too. They did do the father independently went and had DNA testing on the clothing, and there wasn't any blood or traces of blood found at all.
Yeah.
And his
father
had bloody parts.
Yeah. But I mean, you'd think there'd still be something. And his father and his sister were I mean, they're devastated by this, obviously. And the father spent a lot of time blaming that group of people that he had gone hiking with, but in retrospect has been like, that was just my in the moment anger. Like, obviously I trusted these people. Obviously this shouldn't have happened. My kid was out of sight for seconds at the most. And and this happens. There's other cases of this where like, two people turn a corner and the other part of their hiking party gets up to it and they're just gone. And it doesn't make any sense. There's no known cave system. There's no place they could have fallen. And in some cases, they talk about these people will go missing and then they'll appear again like a couple hours later, like 5 miles away, 6 miles away from where they disappeared from. Not in a place and in a way where an experienced outdoorsman will be like, I can't make that walk in 5 hours. There's no fucking way. Like, how the fuck?
Right.
Yeah. The way like it all kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie called The Ritual.
Yes. Oh yeah. I love that movie.
Yeah. So that's what all this kind of reminds me of. Like, as you're going around, you turn around and like all of a sudden nobody's there. I mean, obviously it's a scary movie, but
oh yeah,
it reminds me of that.
But again, these are all real world things that become part of our folklore, that become part of our mythology, and then that's what we build. That's what you build scary stories on. There's some kernel of truth there.
Well, and like that's the thing. I mean, this kid is gone.
Oh yeah,
like all of this is actual, fully blown, documented evidence. Like, why would you only find just the top of his skull in a rock?
Yeah, and a single tooth.
Yeah, like how?
So the last case we're going to cover today is that of Stephen Kubacki. He was a Hope College student who went missing during a cross-country skiing trip in February of 1978. This one is super fucking bizarre. Again, special shout out and thanks to Mullins for suggesting it. Steve was an experienced and avid cross-country skier, very familiar with the local area surrounding the southeast edge of Lake Michigan. This was known to his family and friends that he was a responsible, safe, and very practiced in the sport. This is something he did all the time. They were used to him going off on trips for a couple of days. No problem. He had gone on many such trips in Holland, Michigan, the area surrounding the college, and no one had ever had any cause to worry in his past trips. That was until he went missing on February 20th, 1978, while skiing alone just outside the town of Skagatuck. The day, if you're from Michigan and I'm pronouncing this shit wrong, I'm very sorry. There's a city
have better
Bit,
words.
yeah, have better words. There's a city a little bit north of me spelled Nevada, and I call it Nevada all the time, and people here tell me, no, it's Nevada. And I'm like, no, it's fucking Nevada. Sorry. You're probably right, but damn it. The day after he had left for his trip, a snowmobiler discovered his cross-country poles, skis, and bag abandoned near the shoreline of Lake Michigan and contacted the authorities immediately. After a brief search, the authorities found a 200-yard trail of footprints leading from the abandoned gear out onto the ice of the lake, where they abruptly vanished, along with any trace of Stephen. Without any other ideas or clues, and despite conventional wisdom suggesting that you would rule this out, it was ruled that Stephen had somehow slipped into the ice and been trapped, drowning under the thick ice that he couldn't break to get back to the lake's surface. So to be really clear, there was no evidence that the ice had broken, and the ice was too thick to have broken from the weight of one person. But that's what they ruled it. They ruled it that he fell into the ice and drowned because they had no other fucking idea of what to do in this case. He had vanished in the so-called Lake Michigan Triangle, which stretches from Manitowoc, Wisconsin to Ludington, Michigan to South Benton Harbor. This is an area where there's a lot of different triangles around around the world where people go missing. There's the Bermuda Triangle, which is a super famous one.
That's the money triangle.
Yeah, there's a bunch more. This is one of them. And that was it for just about 15 months, when suddenly on May 5th, 1979, Stephen Kobecki woke up in a grassy field outside Pittsfield, Massachusetts, 700 miles due east from where he vanished. You can draw a straight line from where he vanished, as the crow flies, crossing a lake, to where he woke up. He was dressed in strange clothes, including a t-shirt from a marathon in Wisconsin, and had a strange backpack with him filled with maps and hiking supplies. He also had this idea that he had been running and hiking a lot, even though he had no memory of what happened the last 15 months. He had no idea where he was, and it wasn't until he managed to buy a local newspaper that he found out where he was and when it was. Thankfully, he actually had an aunt who lived just 20 miles away in Greater Barrington, and he traveled to her place to be reunited with his family. Stephen had been a good student and well-liked, if not a popular guy. Although he had been known for playing Dungeons & Dragons, he had owned it, and everybody around campus had respected him for it, and he had been an incredibly active outdoors person and very involved in sporting, including cross-country skiing. In the 15 or so months that he had been missing, he had been declared dead, and he had graduated from college, being awarded his degree posthumously. He agreed to have a physical from a doctor, but claimed that he was healthy of mind and, while confused, was not haunted or disturbed at all by the 15-month absence of his memory, so he never saw a psychologist. This is a weird thing because some of the stuff I'm going to talk about here kind of suggests he may have been haunted by it anyway. Oddly enough, even though his degree had been in German and history, he got another degree in psychology and moved to the Pacific Northwest, where he became a psychologist himself, and he's written a couple of books. He has since refused to speak about the event to anybody in the media and most of the people in his own family. Although he must have told his ex-wife something, because when she was approached, she refused to speak about what he may have told her at all as well. So something definitely happened to this dude, and he's definitely not willing to talk about it.
Yeah, people have that ability to just like block it out. I mean, my buddy did with our ghost story. He's completely blocked it out of his memory.
Yeah. So this brings us to the theories of what might be behind the missing 411. So the first one is alien abduction. We covered at least one story today, possibly two stories today, depending on how you feel, that could plausibly fall under alien abduction. I would say that Stephen Kobecki's case is definitely one of those that kind of makes sense. Dude gets picked up on Lake Michigan, appears somewhere else months later, doesn't want to talk about it.
Goddamn brainworms.
It's goddamn brainworms. So
It's them there people from the future.
the next one that gets talked about a lot is overwrap overlapping realities and doors that exist or rips that exist between these realities. So essentially, this idea is that, and we kind of have a little bit of evidence as far as quantum theory goes on this, that there's multiple realities or multiple layers of reality that overlap each other. And then it further goes on to state that there's a potential that there's weak areas, there's warbles, there's rips that exist where you can kind of accidentally push through from one to the other. This is kind of the sort of stuff that's brought up. The Jared case is one of the cases that I've heard this talked about. The idea that when he initially went missing, he just found one of these rips into an alternate reality. And then when he came back out, he was in a different enough place that he was attacked by something. Something did get him. Something did kill him. Or something in the alternate reality killed him and then deposited him back, essentially. This also goes to explain like why bodies are found after an area has been searched.
I don't know if I necessarily believe that whole thing of like alternate dimensions and having a pass in between them. You know, that one's pretty far fetched for me, but it's definitely like, I don't know what else it could be.
It's a theory.
But I just, I don't know what else it could be. I just don't know it's that. Like,
right. Yeah. 100%. It's kind of like the alien one. The alien one doesn't seem super plausible. The overlapping realities one doesn't seem super plausible, but
I don't know. Since I watched the new documentary of that guy, Lazarus or whatever, the dude who, the whistleblower at Site 46 or Site 56, you know, near Area
Roswell,
51. Yeah,
okay.
no, Area 51. He was talking about how, you know, they use an antimatter engine. The government had 6 UFOs, you know, just sitting in these hangars, and they were doing experiments on them. The aliens were called the Children. Have you not seen that?
No, I'm gonna need to watch that.
Oh yeah, you need to.
No, I haven't seen that part yet.
The part I like about it, I think his name is Daniel something. He was on Joe Rogan too. The part that's so interesting is that this guy, when he talks about it, he was a whistleblower in like the 80s. Like, he was just like, people should know about this.
I know the guy you're talking about. I just haven't seen this show.
Yeah, it's a new one on, I think, Hulu. But he's like he's blown up again. Like, he was super big in like the 80s, and now he's like blowing up again. But he just keeps talking. He's like, I don't care that they were aliens. He's like, I don't give a shit. He's like, yeah, cool, aliens. That makes sense, you know, I guess in a weird way. He's like, what I care about is that the government isn't telling you about this technology that they have access to. Right. He's like, they're lying to you about it. And I was like, this guy is crazy. Like, but like, he's not though. You know what I mean? Like, he is very much like that left brain dominant, like all about the facts, all about technology, all about that. And that's all he talks about. He doesn't talk about, he's straight up saying, he's like, I never saw an alien. I don't care to talk about them. He's like, doesn't matter to me. Don't give a shit.
He's just
like,
the fact that they have this shit and they're just lying about it.
Yeah. He's like, here's the thing. They have this spaceship. It's super cool. Here's how the engines work. And he goes into detail about how these engines work and how this craft like moves around. And you're like, this guy, like, what? Like, and that makes more sense to me. Like that, like I can understand aliens a lot more than I can understand parallel universes, you know? And that's the whole thing, you know, like that's what gets me is like, they talk about aliens being ancient, you know, and what's his name? The dude who, Degrassi or whatever, the guy who talks about the universe all the time. I love that dude. And he's like, oh yeah, no, he's like, there has to be aliens out there. He's like, there's way too much stuff that makes us out there. He's like, we're the most common ingredients in the galaxy. And he's like, there definitely has to be aliens out there. He's like, they probably just haven't found intelligent life on Earth yet. You know, and it was like, ooh, God, sick, nasty jab. You know, like
fucking
just bacteria.
The whole civilization.
Yeah, he's like, fuck your shit. Like,
yeah, I was watching. I think it's called Skinwalker Ranch on Netflix, and
it was kind of,
like at first I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch this because I don't usually watch documentaries just because I don't know, I feel like I like escaping.
You feel like,
and this isn't escaping. This is like forcing, not forcing. This is like going into deeper into real shit, possibly real shit. Right, but the thing that they started to get me, like, as you like watch it further, is like, oh, like one of my theories is that there's essentially not a black hole, but like a rip in like time or some shit like that above the ranch, and that's why there's so many UFO sightings up there or a wormhole. Sorry, not a rip in time. Wormhole above the ranch, and then that's why they have so many UFO sightings, because essentially it's a highway
Yeah.
exactly, for them to come in and take off, and that's why they instantly disappear and whatnot. And then they started doing like all these weird tests, and like I don't know, it was just super inconsistent. Like they were jumping all over the place.
Well,
And,
good.
I was gonna say, like, the thing that kind of got me is, I mean, I could be wrong here. It's not a possibility. But essentially, they were sending rockets up into the air, and they're like, "Oh, there's gamma radiation in the air," and I'm like, "Gamma radiation fucking kills you. Like that. Like if you get hit with gamma, that's the stuff that essentially like bounces around your body and kills you. Like
you're just fucked. Like there's nothing.
Yeah, you're just fucked." Yeah, essentially they were saying that what Ryan has, if you're on our Patreon.
What they say in that show is ionizing gamma radiation.
So it's not legitimate.
They're not. They're just fancying up possible ionized radiation, which is sunlight.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's different radiation that gets through essentially, like
but that's what ionizing. That's what ionizing radiation is it's sunlight.
Yeah, just faster, higher spectrum, essentially.
Yeah. The part that kills me about that show, because I got super into it, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. The dude, the main dude, he's like, I'm a fucking scientist. Yeehaw, cowpokes, I do this. I'm fucking into space. I do this. And then, like, he's like, I have all these credentials. And then 5 minutes into an episode, he's like, I feel very stressed. You feel that? I feel this. My feelings are telling me there's aliens. And it's like, okay, I've just lost all credibility for you. I don't like.
He's also not a scientist.
No, exactly. That's what
and he owns the property. So saying that
no, not that guy.
Okay, that dude's great too. He says he's oh yeah, there's all this weird shit, and then he turns around and sells the property for twice as much money. It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah. Well, and then like, and then there's the dude who's like I knew going into it when they're like, this is our chief security officer, Dragon. I was like, not gonna like this show. Already hate that guy. Like already like really, really bad. Like, you know,
I was like, this is the lamest,
like,
cringy
shit.
Dude,
I was like,
hey, don't dig.
Yeah, don't dig.
don't dig here. Okay, Dragon.
Don't disturb the earth. And then they're like, we pumped it. There's the picture of him, this fucking douchebag from hell.
That's Dragon. That's Dragon. The man, the myth, the legend, Dragon.
If he's gonna be Dragon, I want to be Viper. Like you'll call me Silent Falcon.
Dude, this guy literally looks like
a pug. He looks like a pug. Look at him. Look at that picture. Look at the picture just under that and to the left. Like he looks like a pug.
If you described Modern Warfare to somebody who had never played Modern Warfare and then asked them to draw a character from Modern Warfare, they would have drawn this guy. Like, he literally looks like distilled video game bullshit. Anyway.
And then they had this. He's like, we found a hole in the ground. We need to find out where this water goes. It's like, we pumped in 25,000 gallons of water. It's like you were using like a garden hose. Like, no, like you can't fill.
Oh man,
you can't fill 1,000.
Awesome.
You can't fill 1,000-gallon pool with a garden hose in 15 minutes. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like
you got further than me. I stopped. Like after they. So apparently there was like an attack on alpacas that they bought. They're like, well, normally they attack cows and cattle, but we're gonna bring in alpacas since it's what do you call it? It's new to the ranch. And the alpacas get attacked by like some coyotes, 5 hours after being on the ranch. And they're like, somehow the video feed got messed up and we can't tell what it was. And like the two people, this is where I stopped watching. The two people that were taking care of the alpacas were like, we saw them. They were like large dogs. And they show a video and it's just like, it looks like a coyote attacking the alpacas. And they're just all... They're like immersed in it. They're like, "Oh my god, what was it? Could it have been a white one?" I'm just like, "Oh god."
Well, and then they had one where like the dudes are sitting there like eating, and he like holds up a flashlight and he's like, there's something over there. And then the other guy's like, yeah, gets out his gun and he's like, we gotta go find it. And like they go out there and I'm like, dude, this is so Hollywood. I hate it. Like, I forget we were talking about it once. I forget what it was. I don't know if we were talking about it in a podcast. I thought we were when Chuck
We've talked about
had
it
brought
a
it
couple
up.
of times.
And Chuck was like, I hate this Hollywood bullshit where it's like, oh my God, what was that? I don't know, but I have a feeling, a sense that there's a spirit here. And it's like, you can't do that. Like, you literally just you just throw everything out the window.
We gotta make our own ghost hunting show at some point where like we all go into a building and we've got the little night vision cameras because of course like cameras are so good nowadays that you don't have to use that shitty green, but we'll use that shitty green setting. And then we just all got to be like, oh, something touched my butt. Oh, it's licking my toe. Just freak out for no reason. And then be like, oh yeah, this is a Baskin Robbins with the lights off, guys.
I have a couple people who do that, who do like the audio tapes and stuff. And she's gone to the Whaley house, and I've seen this video, and I've heard the audios, and I'm like, holy shit, that's actually kind of legit scary.
Oh yeah,
they're at the Whaley house. Yeah, well, they're at the Whaley house. They're just recording something outside, and you can hear someone walk behind them, and like the camera's showing behind them. You can hear someone walk behind them, and then both of them turn around, and they're like, "Did you hear that?" And they're like, well, we might have heard that. We need to check the audio. They check the audio and they're like, okay, yeah, we definitely heard that. But the one that got me the most is like they were in a room and they're like, is anybody here? And nothing, they don't hear nothing. But then you play the audio back and there's totally a chick getting railed in the audio. And I shit you not. It's like, they're like, is anybody here? And then you just hear like,
it's the background track for fucking
like, yeah, dude, I was like, did you record over something? And she's like, no, she's like, I swear to God, I've heard it all before, you know, but it's literally this chick just getting her box pounded. And it's like, they're just like walking around the Whaley house.
So the next theory,
I feel something.
I feel something.
Why are my hands sticky?
Anybody smell fish? So the next one is some unknown apex predator exists still somewhere out undiscovered in the wilderness of the United States. And some of this...
I'm over here. Kill me now. Come on, bend me over. Fuck me.
Whoa!
What?
I don't remember that part.
That's the unrated version.
Part of what makes this so compelling is that there's an entire idea that when Teddy Roosevelt set up the National Park Service, he set up the National Park Service to protect something that no one's supposed to talk about. But
it's a thylacine.
That's a conspiracy theory for an entire different.
It's a thylacine.
Yeah, it's got a lot of holes in it. It's a weird and interesting conspiracy theory, but it's pretty much bullshit.
Is it the two thylacines that were destined for the zoo that escaped on mainland, like North America?
Yeah, possibly.
There's a whole thing about that.
There's this entire idea that there's just something we don't know about that's lurking out there. You know, that comes back to like the idea of Loch Ness Monster or these like fish that they discover that are supposed to be dead and all sorts of shit, that there could just be something living out in the woods that's in the national park system that's doing this, or living in those cave systems that seem to link all this shit together.
So, by the way,
not him.
By the way, I have found several games for when Mark has a computer that works again that are 4-player co-op.
It's up right now.
They're 4-player co-op, and there's Loch Ness Monster. So it's all like Phasmophobia, right? But it's like finding Loch Ness Monster, finding Bigfoot, finding the Skinwalker. Like
I'm 100% down to find Nessie.
Dude, the Loch Ness Monster one is terrifying. Like,
that's crazy.
I mean, we could play Stormworks to go try to find the fucking Kraken. That was terrifying
there is a Kraken
too.
No, dude, this one's
like I was gonna say, what is it, like Resident Evil 4? They had that big was it a shark or something?
Yeah,
in the lake
shark.
Yeah.
It was a catfish.
Really?
The catatafish.
Oh my god!
It was just a massive. Well, it was a massive, altered catfish.
Dude, there There was a
And then,
catfish at the state fair that was like this fucking size of a VW bug that they had
Oh, yeah.
in one of the.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
Oh, yeah.
Jesus Christ!
Oh, yeah.
This thing
They
can
get
eat
that
my
big.
fucking body.
They get
Yeah.
that big.
Not Stalker, the other one. Ryan,
hear
you're more familiar with the Eastern Bloc themed games than some of these other guys. What's the one? Metro. That's the one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the newest Metro. There's actually an environmental boss called the Sarfish,
Yes.
and it's a massive fucking fish. It's huge. It's like the size of a bus.
So the next two theories are kind of connected and kind of not. So the next one is Skinwalkers or Wendigo are doing it. So Skinwalkers and Wendigo are both Native American legends, creatures of Native American legends. A Skinwalker is a shaman who has taken the skin of an animal, and they can use that skin of that animal to turn into that animal. And the more they do it, they essentially lose themselves to it. So they become more animalistic over time. And a Wendigo is somebody who has eaten human flesh, and that has twisted them into a flesh craving, flesh devouring monster. In both cases, I kind of think that both exist in different ways. We'll get into them a little bit more. They'll get their own episode. Wendigo will definitely get their own. Skinwalkers and Wendigo will definitely get their own. But others,
there's way too much to them to cover in like 1 second.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, there was this. There's this one video I saw of probably not a skinwalker, but essentially like a coyote. Like this guy was walking down a path, and he kind of like looks over to the right, and he sees like a coyote kind of scurry away from him, and then like 2 seconds later, a coyote kind of just slowly walks up like through the brush, and like its neck is like fucked up. Its head is like kind of hanging off to the side, and it slowly walks up to him and like kind of side eyes him because he can't look straight for like 2 seconds, and then he jumps down the trail and just kind of trots down the trail. It was the most like disturbing thing.
Did you see the one like that with the deer, where the deer?
Oh,
like,
no, it was a
runs
deer.
out of
It
the
wasn't
tree?
a-
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I was like, the deer. Ooh.
Yeah. You seen that one, dude?
Yeah,
Oh
dude,
my
its
God.
head is so fucked up.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
ooh.
People were saying
See,
like,
like,
oh, it might have just
that
got hit by a
picture-
car and snapped its neck, and
Yeah.
it was kind of just like on its last legs.
more
but, dude,
than
it was-
likely.
yeah, but oh my god, it is the creepiest, most disturbing
Dude.
thing, dude.
You just
It
see one of
tripped
those
me out.
fucking things,
Yeah, fuck
and it makes that scary ass deer noise where it's all.
Yeah. Oh god, fucking kill it.
Dude, when we play DayZ and like the elk make noises, I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Oh,
Like,
Dude,
my
elk
God.
make weird noises.
dude.
Did you guys see the picture of the elk that I posted? I'm pretty sure I shared it. There was an elk at the fair too. This motherfucker was huge.
Dude, elk are not small. Like,
No, they're
dude,
not at all.
elk are the size. They're just shy of moose. Like,
So, related to skinwalkers and Wendigo are feral people. And we talked about feral people earlier. Feral people exist. They're people who have just given up and could generationally be given up, essentially. And they share, there's a lot of back and forth. Are feral people skinwalkers? Are feral people Wendigo? Is there more there? But the idea basically being that there's feral people in these national park systems that come down and take people. Do they take them for cannibalistic reasons? Do they take them because they're psychos? Who fucking knows? The other thing that Mullins brought up, and we talked about it earlier, was the weird correlation between the major limestone and lava cave systems of the United States, the national parks of the United States, and the clusters and missing persons cases of the United States. And there's a picture of this that it's pretty crazy. If you Google search the missing 411 in cave systems, you'll find it. It's also used in a couple of different things. But it's super
creepy.
Yeah, we're looking at it right now. It's compelling. That was a cat. But look at the map.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's so. It's always the
God.
cat. It's always the cat.
So the last
There it goes again.
theory
Oh,
that I
good.
wanted to talk about was I talked to some search and rescue veterans, and I got a couple of different answers. So the biggest answer I'm going to go with is from a search and rescue friend of mine from California. And she said that this is really just kind of the perfect storm of the reason that people go missing. It's people not wanting to be found, abductions, serial killers that haven't been identified or found yet, and people that are attempting to are attempting to die by suicide by wandering into the nothing. She says that there are a lot of cases that they initially get that seem really weird and they seem super disconnected. But in her experience, and she's got a lot of it, she's got close to 20 years experience in search and rescue, is kind of just sort of boiled down to or distilled to, it doesn't make sense today, but give it a couple of weeks, give it a couple of months, and it'll make sense then. She is incredibly skeptical of the idea of the missing 411, and being one of the people that I know who has the most experience in it, that kind of tempered me as I was doing this research. However, I have a friend who does search and rescue as a veteran on the East Coast dealing with the Appalachians, and he has fucking weird ass stories. The Appalachians are probably an area that we need to cover because holy shit, the old gods of Appalachia are fucking crazy. There's some crazy ass shit there. He also says that quite a bit of it is probably abductions and serial killers, but he also says the reason that there's probably a lot of unidentified serial killers in Appalachia is because Appalachia's fucking spooky as shit. He also has a couple of
Mountain Mama,
right.
Take
He's
me
also
home.
he's also
Cook
got
me
a
into stew.
he's also got a couple of stories that are just fucking downright like, wait, what? Really? This happened? I'm trying to get him to write one down and send it to us so we can read it on air. So fingers crossed that that's going to happen. So let's tie this all back into Warhammer 40K and to writing lore and the reason that folklore and that myth and that urban legends are important. So the Ordo Obscurus angle, linking all of this to the Innsmouth Hive and the Carcosan sector in general. I think the easiest and top way is the warp travel and warp disappearances. The warp does a lot of these missing 411 cases in the Warhammer 40K universe directly go into the way that the warp works. And whether or not that's warp travel of an entire ship, or if that's like teleportation or accidental teleportation or accidental warp creatures popping out, grabbing you and go, gotcha, bitch, and then going back away. We've got a couple of different
accidental
ideas.
warp lizards.
Yeah, the accidental warp alligators.
Suddenly warp gator.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, right? Oh, shit. I think the next thing that we can play with, and the next thing that would be very easy to play with, is, a lot of the settled planets that humanity has found in the Warhammer 40K universe, somebody was there before, which means that several of them are connected to the webway. There could be webway portals hidden in plain sight, or webway portals that are very well hidden that are being accessed, and people could disappear into them, accidentally stumble into them, or we could have a whole Drukhari criminal empire that exists on Arconia that is feeding the sport of murder ball to specifically drive up their slave pitting fights in
I feel
the
like your might
Underhive.
is
Now it's canon. We said it
that's a
like
really
one
weak-
of our
that's a
first
really weak
episodes. Look, it's just a theory, okay? So there's a lot of different things that could be played with. There's a lot of different story elements. Each one of the cases that we covered has some really wiggity stuff, and pulled apart as a template to be applied to a story, a short story form. A lot of them have things that definitely could work. And obviously, be careful. I personally wouldn't use Jared's story as the basis because that's incredibly sad. And there's a lot of missing kids in all of this that it's heartbreaking. As somebody who doesn't have kids and is not wanting kids, it's incredibly heartbreaking even for me. So I imagine for parents, it's even fucking worse. Like, Mark, I have no idea how you felt when I covered some of those, but
Yeah, I mean, it is horrible, but I don't know.
He's all,
I
nah, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, mean, I'm a pretty heartless, probably selfish person. Like, unless it happens to me, I don't really care. I'm just kidding. It's horrible, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, try to be tasteful, I guess, is what Ryan's trying to say.
Yeah. And obviously, this stuff informs how we write. And, we're in between part 1 and part 2 of creative writing, horror, and suspense. So there's probably a really great place for this episode, and probably a really great place for a lot of these real world stories. That there's nothing more horrible in a lot of cases than shit that's happened in the real world. Serial killers are a real thing. Abductors are a real thing. And we play with these elements when we're building Innsmouth's lore itself, and when we're building things into the Lorus Obscurus. I mean, just in general, the way that the Inquisitor stories, the famous Inquisition stories that exist in the 40K lore to boot, play with a lot of this stuff too. Abduction and stuff like that circle in and out of the Eisenhorn, Ravenor, and Beckwin series just as much as they circle in and out of ideas and little kernels that we've dropped as far as what the Drukhari are doing in the Underhive and what it means. Of course, the last big one is you can just fall back to that monster. Four-armed Emperor could be taking him. Sump Squatch could be taking him. Any of the creepy creatures that we've defined that live in the sump or live underneath the glacial ice could have taken them. It's all sorts of just different things. And as to why people might be in this position, people hunt the sump. They look for archaeotech. People probably like to hike, just like people like to hike now. And if you can get down to some of those nicer glacial areas underneath the Underhive and underneath the sump, there's probably little nice walks you can take. I mean, I don't know if nice walks is a good way to say it, but
it's like almost like old time, new time kind of thing. Where
right.
Nobody has PS5s anymore. So what did you used to do when you were a kid? You used to go out and adventure and fuck yourself up. So
walk around.
Right.
Yeah, the first video gaming system is attached to the bottom of my legs, and it's called my toes. I mean my feet. All right, guys. Well, any closing thoughts on working this stuff into the Lorus Obscurus, working this stuff into Warhammer lore? I know we went a little long on details on this one, so it's a little difficult to dive deep and have our traditional warpy conversation. But
I mean, it's great because, we touched on it. There's a couple different versions of it, so that you could easily play in with Xenos or Warp shenanigans or human cultists. You could play with all three branches.
Oh my god, I didn't even think cultist. Look at that shit right there.
Oh yeah, like
nice
the Hills Have Eyes could just be Chaos Cult.
Oh, that's feral people. Yeah, the Hills Have Eyes, feral people.
Oh my god, I've never.
The feral people. That's totally like Chaos Cultists and stuff like that. Could totally be that.
Never been more angry watching a movie than watching The Hills Have Eyes.
I've never seen it. Actually, I knew better than to watch that one. I heard it wasn't all that bad.
I saw it, but it was. Yeah, I think I saw it, but it was pretty forgettable. So I just kind of whatever.
It's so bad because the people are just like useless.
Like, guys, if you haven't seen it, there's a movie called Wrong Turn that's fucking amazing.
Oh, I think I've seen that one.
It's supposed to be like a spoof?
No, it's a legit horror film.
Legit horror? Oh.
Actually, speaking of spoofs...
look at that face, Marky.
I thought she had an arrow in her back.
I bet she sucks toes.
Right?
We still have need of your bolter, brother.
Throw it in that bitch's face. Oh, dude, I keep thinking that those arrows are sticking out of people. I thought those arrows were sticking out of his head.
But, speaking of spoofs, Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh my god.
Good. So good.
We brought it up last episode.
that is literally what we would all be.
That is exactly us.
These kids keep coming onto our property and killing themselves.
God damn it! They keep killing themselves. That one tripped and fell on a rake. That one shot himself.
So good.
Yeah, so fucking good. All right, guys. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for the episode. If you have any questions about our Lorus Obscurus segments, ideas for future Lorus Obscurus segments, or spooky dooky tales of your own that you want to share with us, you can reach us at email at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or jimdarkgaming@gmail.com. You can also get a hold of us by becoming an active member in our Discord community. We love to share in your homebrew lore, answer any questions you have about lore, and much, much more. We feature community lore in our Tales from the Hive episodes, and we dip into spooky dooky side of things here on Lorus Obscurus. So share those real-world ghost stories or lore that you want us to feature on the show.
Excellently done.
You can also find us online with our website or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We have links to everything down in the show notes to make your life just a little bit easier. You can help the podcast grow in one of two ways. Liking and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast fix helps immensely. We are on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, and a couple more. Help us grow and meet our milestones and goals by joining us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. We have a current goal to reach 30 subscribers so we can start paying our editing intern. All Patreon members get access to a video version of the podcast episodes, which includes some bonus content at the beginning, as well as we leave in a bunch of our bloopers. You can hear the shit that just gets cut out. It's kind of the director's cut, except the director doesn't actually want you to hear it. As well as that, you get access to our painting contest. We have a painting contest we run 4 times a year. We are going into our newest one right now, which wraps up on October 31st. So if that strikes your fancy, jump on in and get involved with that. You have a chance to win a nifty red squig trophy. We also have a bunch of other perks at our higher levels, such as polls. Things like today, Mullins, who we mentioned a couple of times in the episode as part of our Patreon, he sent us some questions that got directly linked into the episode. And there's some art assets and some role-playing assets on the way. There's some art assets now and role-playing assets on the way to just kind of help you guys have a more interesting collaborative storytelling and role-playing experience in the Warhammer 40K universe. So please go on over and check it out. Introducing Mama Bexy's Flack and Jacks weeknight special. For 10 credits, secure 20 Sumpfire wings and a flagon of Brass Barrel fungi beer. Just remember to wipe off your fingers before slipping any credits to the entertainment that you might be watching. Sumpfire tips, they don't tip very well. They kind of burn. Careening down the slipways of the outer Hive shell like grav-bored maniacs hell-bent on our own destruction. We are the voice of Underhive, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Keep those dials set and scanning until next time. We will wait for you right here. Same ratty frequency, same ratty-ass attitude. You know they say when a four-armed emperor hunts, it can eat up to 5 times its body weight. So always remember to bring at least 6 additional friends with you on those Archaeo trip hunts.
Pleasure doing business with you, Emperor.